Welcome to our podcast. This is Friends on Fire.
I'm Mike. I'm a lifelong devotee of financial independence. I even wrote a book about it.
And I'm Maggie, a newer convert, but just as passionate, especially on the intersection of minimalism and financial independence.
We're one and the same.
We are two like-minded friends who believe that talking about money with your friends and family opens the door to financial well-being.
The Friends on Fire podcast is about dispelling myths, building financial acumen, and sharing your financial independence journey with the people you care about.
This is Friends on Fire.
Hey, Mike.
Hey, Maggie.
How's it going?
I'm doing pretty well. How are you?
Good. Still riding my post-vacation high for a little longer.
For like one more day? I'm surprised it lasted this long. Work must have been a little light.
Barely. No, it didn't really. I remembered it yesterday when I had the day off.
Speaking of work, I was actually in the office today.
What?
Yes.
It's an office.
Yeah, exactly. That's how I felt.
You know how to get there? Your Ford Explorer drove you there?
Yes, it did.
It made it?
I did have a couple moments on my 2-minute commute where I sort of doubted that I knew how to get back there. Cause after you get off the main street, you could circle around the building, get in the parking lot.
Yeah.
But I found it and I went
You got to
in.
get into the right parking deck.
Mm-hmm.
Did you remember your badge? That's a big one.
Remembered my badge. I remember what floor I worked on. I was particularly concerned about that.
You remembered to put on pants and a shirt and
Yes, I wore buttons for the first time in 13 months.
Nice. On your pants and shirt, probably.
Yeah. Yes.
I haven't worn buttons on pants. I've worn buttons on pants 5 times in the past year.
Oh, because you're wearing sweatpants every day?
Yeah, or leggings or, athletic. Athleisure is what I like to call it.
Mm-hmm.
Dressy athleisure, business casual athleisure.
Yeah, you know what's ironic? For someone who is such a terrible athlete, you certainly dress the part now.
I'm such a good athlete.
You keep telling me stories about how terrible you were.
I spent a lot of time on the bench. I was terrible in high school because I was around so many people better than me. But now I think I'm actually maybe a better athlete than the average person my age because I have stayed in shape and I'm very active. But in high school, I was at the bottom of my class in terms of athletics.
Well, not sure it works that way. But anyway, we are getting off track. So I went into the office today because we had to clear out all of our stuff. We're not being laid off, if anybody's concerned. No, I was not fired. Although I did kind of feel like that when I was walking out of the building with a box in my arms.
Felt weird, yeah.
So we are moving to a completely different workspace post-pandemic.
Work style, right?
Yeah. Well, work style and
buildings.
workplace environment, setup, structure.
Yes. Your desk as it was will never be like that again.
Yes.
My office as it was.
Yes, we will never have permanent assigned workspaces anymore.
Yeah.
And so we thought it would be a good opportunity to kind of talk about something that's relevant in our lives, and I'm sure in many of our listeners' lives, about how to work from home. Because even though we have an office and we plan to reopen that office, most of us are going to be working from home the majority of the time, which I personally am pretty excited about.
I'm excited about it too. It just provides the ultimate flexibility. We will still have an office to go to when we want to go to it, but we don't have to go every day. And everybody cannot go every day. There will not be enough space, right? Everybody can go every couple days. There'll be plenty of space. Hey, I got a quick question though.
Okay.
You've been there. How long have you worked there?
Almost 2.5 years. 2.5
years. How much physical stuff did you have to carry out of the building with you today?
Oh, one tote?
On your back, so you could carry it all on your person.
Yes. Well, I did have an extra box of shit that you had me pick up out of your office, little tchotchkes and toys.
Yeah. They were going to throw them away. I'm going to give them to our school. So was that a whole box worth of stuff?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow. I thought it was just a little bit. I have been there for 14 years, and I have been in a fairly large private office for almost 10 years. So I've moved things there, from my house over the years, just books, and I got all my old business school books. I had a lot of stuff is my point. It was when I think I filled up the back of what I, now have an SUV, as you know, the whole back of it was totally filled up. I mean, I had to take multiple, I probably took 4 trips to my car.
Unbelievable.
It was ridiculous. And a lot of it, I just didn't feel like going through there. It was just books and stuff and picture frames, lamps. But I mean, I felt like I was moving out of a college dorm. I had so much. I had dishes, just a ridiculous amount of stuff that I did not miss for an entire year when I was away from it because I couldn't get into the office. But it was a very weird, it was an oddly like emotional experience when I went to do mine a couple weeks before Mike. And it was an odd experience of like packing up your stuff, but not actually leaving the company, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Which is not our point today, but
no,
we're just,
it's not.
You know, Mike likes when I talk about my feelings. So
yes.
There you go.
Yeah. Your emotional response to mundane activities, I think, is what our listeners really come for. Because many companies are now in the same position where people are being vaccinated. We're now at a point where we can return to the office, but they have to face the new normal. I think people are having to start to think about, if not make kind of long-term plans for how they will work from home and how often and what that setup is going to be. I think for a lot of the past year, it's always been, well, it might just be a few more months. It might just be a few more months. Now, we kind of know what the future is going to look like. So today's episode is going to be about how to frugally, keyword frugally, build your home office.
Yeah, and more for the new normal, for this is a more permanent thing, because when we were first talking about this episode, Mike, at first I was like, oh, we should have done this a year ago. And we all were like, you know, forced to go home and work from home. But like you said, so many of us, even during the past year, just it had a temporary feeling. You were like dipping your toes in it. You weren't going to invest in something. You weren't, because you were like, oh, it's just going to be another month. It's just going to be, you know, and like every month a new announcement would come out saying, oh, you know, at least for another 2 or 3 months, we're not going to reopen. And so this is a unique time in the sense that though this feels like it may be a year late, this is actually when many people are starting to get a sense of what the new normal might look like for them. And for both of us, it means working from home a lot more than we ever did prior to this past year. So we want to settle in, you know, get comfy, make it nice.
So let's jump into our 10 plus. I think we have like 13, but that didn't really fit like counting. A good title. So we're just going to say 10 plus tips.
As long as there's at least 10 tips, you can call it 10 tips.
Yeah, you know? Exactly. So we've broken these into categories. First category is going to be location. Location,
you know? So yeah, you want to pick a place that you're going to be comfortable, whether it's in a closet, extra closet that you have in your house. I don't literally mean sitting in the closet, but that might work for you. But I had like a closet in my bedroom that was kind of converted to a kind of office built into a closet. Do you not know what I'm talking about?
I can't picture it in my head.
Picture just a regular closet that you have. Go to like Pinterest. You'll see this. A lot of people will turn a closet into an office. When you open the doors, picture that you have like a desktop in there and then shelves, and like you're facing inside the closet, and like you can close it off at the end of the day. I know a ton of people who have that as their office setup, especially in smaller spaces.
Yeah, but you have a big house.
Now, but I didn't used to work. This is a good example. So for months, I worked out of my office closet because that's the only place we had a quote office in the house. And I got to the point where I was like, I can't work in my bedroom every day. So speaking of location, like for me, it was the background of my video was my bed, which was just a little too much, right? I was in that room all day long. I don't need my coworkers like seeing where I sleep every night. And so I eventually was like, you know what? I do have a big house and I have empty guest rooms downstairs. And I hadn't thought of it at first, but I was like, I'm going to go down there and I'm going to convert one of the guest rooms into an office because we don't need multiple guest rooms. Certainly in the middle of a pandemic, we don't. And so back to the point of location, pick a good location. Natural light is great. I picked mine based on the room that had 5 windows in it. So I wanted a lot of natural light. And it had a good paint color. The other room, I just was like, I can't work with this. The other room is the pink and purple room from one of my old kids' rooms. It was like, I was like, I cannot work in here and I don't feel like painting. Anyways, pick a good location. We won't drag them all out this long.
This is going to be the longest episode ever. So second point related to location is what you are in proximity to. So how far are you away from the Wi-Fi router? Are you close to kids, young kids who need supervision, or are you further away from kids? If they make a lot of noise, we recommend the latter.
I picked the room furthest away from where my kids are because they're old enough to like fend for themselves. And this was the most quiet spot in the house.
Is it on the same floor as your kitchen where you might be going a lot? Is it close to a bathroom that you're going to be using throughout the day. So make sure that it is within the right distance of all the things that you want to be around or away from.
The good news if it's in your house, it's probably very close to everything unless you live in some sort of massive mansion where it takes you a while to get to the bathroom.
Maybe someone isn't a fan of stairs, Maggie.
Oh, you're right. You're right. Maybe that, yes, you're right. That's a fair point.
All right. Number 3.
The last point on location is if you do not have a lot of space, get creative within the space that you do have, right? So we were talking earlier about kind of converting like a closet into an office space that you can close the doors on and still kind of keep all your stuff stored away nicely in and have a place to work in. I know people who have created like mobile workstations. All the teachers are doing that now when they have to switch classrooms in elementary school. They kind of have all their stuff set up, and it doesn't necessarily even need to be that your desk is mobile. It might just be that you have a caddy where you keep all your work stuff and you can kind of rotate between the dining room in the morning, if that's a quiet space to work in, and then swap with your partner in the afternoon and, go take turns in the office, whatever it is. Like, you can get creative with it, even if you don't have a lot of space and you're not able to turn like an entire room into an office or something like that.
That's a great idea. My setup is quite permanent in my basement. It is large and permanent and not easy to move. So yeah, I did not follow that advice. So moving on to our second category of technology. And this is one of the things where I actually spend, I won't say quite a bit of money because I'm still quite frugal in this area, but it is one of the things where I will spend money because I value the convenience and capabilities that technology brings. So the first thing is you need a big monitor. These tiny little monitors on your laptop are going to burn you out real quick. And so it is worthwhile to invest in a monitor of a large size, if not 2. If you are working in any sort of environment where you're working on presentations or Excel files, I think you will understand why you need 2 monitors. So you can certainly look for used ones before you buy new, and you don't need to buy a $500 monitor. You can go buy a $100 monitor or $150 monitor. They work great. High resolution. They look nice. You don't need to buy one of these like ultra curved 8K monitors that you bought, Maggie.
I was just going to say, I really like my curved monitor, but it wasn't that expensive. It's $300, I think.
That's a lot for a monitor.
I've gotten very much my money's worth out of it.
Okay.
The other thing I'd say on monitors is I used to work all the time remote when traveling, et cetera, on a really small MacBook Air screen, the like 11-inch screen. And it never bothered me because I was using it, small doses. But when you really get a good monitor and use it consistently, like it is a game changer. So I know some people who for this past year have been working on just their laptop and they've never gotten a monitor. And it's just kind of shocking to me because it is so much better for your eyes, just for your workspace. Like I personally, at least, am so much more productive and faster when I have a big screen and can see things really easily and crisply and clearly. And then also get it at the right height because depending on what your setup is, and we'll talk about ergonomics in a bit, but the nice thing about a monitor is you can adjust it much differently than like where your keyboard and other things are versus when it's stuck to your laptop. There's only so much you can do there.
So I'll do the second one because I like technology and I like talking about it. So second item is you do not need a $3,000 laptop. $1,000 will get you a really nice machine, and the increased capabilities that come after that are going to be basically unnoticeable for everybody unless you're doing like hardcore programming or something like that. Now, less than $500 and you're going to run into some issues that you will definitely notice. But I think 500 to 1,000 is a pretty good target to get a really nice machine. Here are some kind of sub tips within this recommendation. It should have a large monitor because even though you should get an external monitor and plug it into, you might want to have both running at the same time, or you may want to move around or have kind of like a mobile system like you were talking about earlier, Maggie. So get one with a large monitor. Second point, it should have a meaningful amount of RAM, at least 8 gigabytes. RAM is what allows multiple programs to run quickly and simultaneously. And if you don't have this, you will notice and it's going to be a pain. Third point, it should have a SSD, solid state drive, versus an optical drive, one that spins. Solid state drives are faster. They are cooler, as in temperature, and they don't make any noise. So definitely get an SSD, and you should target 500 gigabytes or above.
Sometimes when you start talking about stuff like this, my mind like literally just wanders off and is like looking at squirrels outside.
I could see it in your face.
SSD, solid state, hard drive, something spinning, hot, getting hot.
All right. Do you need me to repeat it?
No, I just buy a Mac and I just assume it does all the things I need.
Yes. Well, that Mac also probably cost you. Well, you had the company pay for it.
That's not, I didn't have them pay for it. They handed it to me. We're like, please use this to do your great work.
You have to make a special request to get an expensive MacBook, and then I have to approve it. So this was not something that somebody... I don't even have
the expensive MacBook. I don't have the Pro.
They are expensive. Anyway, we are getting off topic.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, but you're not going to like deny my Mac now, are you?
I might kind of end the lease.
I can't function without one.
I know. So last point, it should have numerous external ports. So USB ports, HDMI ports, because you are going to want to plug in extra monitors. You're going to want to have wireless keyboard and mouse. And if you are stuck with like one USB port, you're going to regret it later.
You know, you're like a PC guy to make that comment for what it's worth, because I'm laughing because we were just talking about Macs and Macs have one port. Mm-hmm. And then you have to, this is like their thing. And then you have to buy like expensive adapters to connect all your crap.
Yeah. So reference my earlier point about not needing to buy a $3,000 laptop.
The last thing on technology is similar to kind of what we were talking about having a good monitor. Having a separate keyboard and mouse can be really clutch, right? Like if you're trying to use a laptop as your main keyboard and mouse and you're using a trackpad and everything else, it can be really difficult on your fingers and hands, and even just the ergonomics of it are tough. And so again, if you don't have an external keyboard and mouse, it's definitely worth the investment. It's not that expensive. You can do wired or wireless. And I even would add to that, like, I don't use a lot of like kind of funky extra devices, but like I do use one of those mouse pads that has like a wrist thing where it kind of like supports your wrist when you hold the mouse. And I find it to be so incredibly helpful. Like my wrist like hurts when I don't use one of those. So just, thinking about your mouse and keyboard setup can be incredibly worth the investment also.
All right, let's move on to ergonomics. Maggie, why don't you take this one away?
Okay, so we mentioned this briefly earlier, but make sure you have a setup that is ergonomically friendly. So starting with your desk, your chair combo that gets you to the right height, your feet should touch the ground or your feet should be on a footrest. Your arms should be able to rest at a 90-degree angle on the table. That way, that's when you know you're kind of at the right height. There's a lot of things you can kind of Google around making sure that you've got the right ergonomic setup, but it really does matter. You're sitting like this for very long periods of time. If you're into stand-up desks, that's a great way to kind of help with some of the pressure that it can have on your back and other areas. But make sure that you have a right setup, because again, you could be sitting this way for 8+ hours a day, and it's important to get the right setup and make sure you have a good adjustable chair and that it's aligned with the right desk and all that.
Now, one important ergonomic piece of advice that I seem to have a lot of problems with is the height of your monitors. So they should be eye level. So your eye should be at the top of the monitor level. And so you're not like looking up dramatically or looking down. Now, if you don't do this and like you are standing up and looking down at a laptop that you're working on like a countertop, this will strain your neck and cause a lot of pain. And I have this all the time. Like if I'm set up with my laptop somewhere other than my desk, my neck starts hurting and like hurts for like 2 days. I think this is me getting old. This is not something you should mess around with. You should get your monitors at the right level and make sure that you're not going to strain your neck throughout the day. Yeah,
this is definitely just a general good example of an area where the cost of investing in the right equipment and setup could potentially save you a lot of money on the flip side if you have, back issues and medical bills associated with sitting really uncomfortably. And you may not realize it, but every especially large company, almost just any legitimate company, they've actually put thought into this stuff, right? They've made sure that they've ordered good desks and good chairs that are comfortable and good for your back, that they have, monitors at the right heights, all that, because they know that matters. And so one of the things you lose by having a professional office space set up is you've now got to figure that out for yourself at home. But it may have always gone right past you at work, but somebody was thinking about those things on your behalf at work. And then the last thing that I mentioned really briefly earlier is a footrest. Particularly, maybe it's more of like a thing with women. I don't know, but like my feet can't touch the ground.
Yeah, with tiny women, this has never been an issue with me.
Is it not? Have you never used a footrest?
No.
Oh, I love it. Well, you said something. Oh, okay. When you said something about a box, I was like, oh, you've clearly done this. I still, for anyone who has ever nursed, I still have like my Medela brand, like wooden footrest, which I don't even know why they sell you those when you're breastfeeding, that they think you need a footrest. I guess it's for the same reason. Somehow you produce more milk. I don't know. We probably shouldn't talk about this. Anyways,
this is one of those things where like you get into an explanation and then you're like, why do I think
like,
that?
Why am I talking about producing milk?
This can't be right.
We're talking about footrest. Anyways, I still have that. It's like a nice looking white wooden footrest. I used it in my office. I brought it home when we went remote. And you can also buy them on Amazon for like $20. They have ones that are like soft and they feel nice on your feet. You can, you have your bare feet on them or whatever. They have ones that like rock even, or as Mike suggested, you could just put a box down there for free.
Yeah. You don't need to spend money on stuff.
The idea is just to get your feet off the ground so that they're at the right height, because you can't really see it. But when I sit where my arms and everything else are right, my legs are a little too low. And so having something to put your feet on is incredibly comfortable. And if you've never done it, you don't know what you're missing. Let me just say, check out a footrest. I was trying to make that my most like sultry voice. Like, you do not know what you're missing.
Yeah, I don't think I care. All right.
Well, just get an old Amazon box and give it a try, Mike. Okay.
All right, let's move on to some miscellaneous stuff. We had those 3 kind of big categories for us, but we're just going to fire through some other piece of advice when you set up your home office.
Because the stuff, it matters. You can have all the things we just talked about set up, but if you have crap everywhere and it's super distracting, right? Like that can be a big problem. So a lot of this quote stuff is actually talking about all the other stuff in your office.
Or getting rid of all the other stuff in your office.
Yeah, exactly.
So first thing is, you don't need a lot of gadgets unless they are solving a specific problem for you. I think there are, like everything else, there's a lot of people pushing different things that you need, like wireless charging this and, special pen that works on your laptop for that. And none of that stuff really matters. If you have a specific need and it's something you use all the time, or it's solving a particular problem, it might be worthwhile to invest in it, but don't get sucked into glamming out your home office just because you think it looks cool.
Yeah. Or if you do really want to glam it out and make it look nice, just do it on the cheap, right? Be frugal about it. Reuse things you already have. So one of the things that I have in my home office was I had 2 IKEA white dressers that were in here from when it was a guest room, and like they're my kids' old dressers. They're actually perfect because it's kind of some extra counter space. I could put different supplies and files inside the drawers. And so one of the tips is just think about what you can reuse in terms of things you already have that you could perhaps use in your home office or for your home office. Repaint a bookshelf, all sorts of things you could do on the cheap.
Consider minimizing the traditional office supplies. So we are all stuck in the habit of getting staplers and scissors and paper clips and alligator clips and all that sort of stuff. And if you're
What's an alligator clip?
It's one of those black things where you like pinch it.
I've never called it an alligator clip.
I think that's what they're called. But I'm sure as people are cleaning out their offices, like I had a whole drawer full of this stuff, just because like that's what you're given when you show up.
What'd you do with it?
I threw it in the trash. So like everything else on my desk. So you don't need all that stuff. You can do almost everything digitally. And so really take this time to rethink how you want to work, and don't just fall into old habits of like bringing in all this stuff that you're not going to use.
Yeah. Like, when was the last time you used an actual stapler in your home office? Rarely, if ever. I think you could get by with that one, I would argue. The other thing is, I know that this is at least the way I operate, but try to keep your space as minimal and clear of miscellaneous stuff and crap as possible, right? Whether you're just in an office closet or you have a whole room, try to keep it clear and clean. Everybody's a little bit different, but there are a ton of studies that the amount of physical distractions that you have around you either is, if there's a lot, it's really distracting. And if it's super clean, it really helps to improve your focus and your ability to get things done. And so try to really keep an office that is sparse and clean. Like, Mike, no offense, but your office kind of stresses me out. Just visually. because you have all that stuff in storage behind you. I liked when you had those flags up that were like covering it up. But it just like stresses me out. I'm just like, oh, I'd be like, I got to go through that tote full of gift wrap. And
well, we have this room so that we don't have the rest of the house cluttered.
I know. I'm just saying, but that's a good example for me. I could not work in what is also a storage room.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just too like, I would need to cover it up. I would need to like, I just can't handle it.
Okay. Fair point.
I'm not trying to knock your office. I know what you're looking at is very nice, but I don't get to see that. I have to look behind you.
Okay.
It's kind of stressful.
No. I will do my best to address it in the future. But I don't want you to be stressed out.
If it doesn't bother you, you don't need to address it.
No, it doesn't bother me.
But if it like that would, my only point was the physical things for me are incredibly distracting. Okay.
All right. Next point. When you are buying stuff, especially furniture, consider used furniture. Or if you're not going to buy used, buy something modest. Like you don't need a $2,000 mahogany desk for your basement office. Just buy something practical at IKEA for $100. If you can't find something used, it will work just fine.
This is the perfect time to embrace places like IKEA. The other thing I would say is be conscious of what's going on in the world too. There are tons of people, like myself included, who purchased IKEA desks and other things for my kids who have been working remote for the past, or who have been virtual schooling for the past year. All these kids are starting to go back to school. And I bet there are people who are selling things and are looking to kind of like now pare down what they have in their own house. So you could score a good deal on like a neighborhood Facebook group or other things and ask, just sometimes post say, hey, I'm looking to buy a desk. Does anyone have anything used before I buy something new?
Along the same lines of traditional office supplies and minimalist desks, printing things can be really expensive. Printers are expensive. Printer ink is expensive if you're doing it in color. Almost everything can be done digitally right now. And so if you just want to skip the habit of printing something out and making physical notes in something, you'll save clutter, money, and some hassle.
Yeah, we will go to great lengths to avoid printing things in our house. I mean, even when we were like doing rental power, we were just doing everything electronically. And just sometimes I'll even act like I don't have a printer. Someone will say like, can you print this out? And I'll be like, oh no, I don't. And then they give me some other option to like do it electronically. So I pretend like you don't have a printer. That's my tip. And then the last item is figure out if there are things your company will let you expense. There are some companies, depending on, what the working remote situation is, where you potentially could expense certain things that you needed. It can't hurt to ask, right? Unless, of course, your finance business partner is Mike, in which case you probably shouldn't ask.
Yeah, don't ask me. Answer's no. If anybody listening from work is considering asking me to buy something, just don't.
Answer's no. One of my favorite home office frugal tips is actually something that you inspired me on. So I have to compliment you. And you didn't give me the exact idea, but you challenged me on what I was going to do, which again, we always talk about accountability partners. Do you remember what I'm talking about? Do you know?
I do remember.
So I was going to buy like a multiple $100, maybe $100 or a little bit more than $100 dry erase board, like a nice framed in one. And I wanted a big one because I wanted a dry erase board in my office, and I had one in my office at work. Now, my husband challenged how often I actually use the one in my office. And I was like, well, that's not the point, Greg. I think a dry erase board will make me more productive. So, I think I asked you some question about it too. Greg was more questioning if I was going to use it, not the expense. You were like, that's ridiculous. I don't remember what your response is. Your response is always funny when I ask you, like, should I spend blah, blah on blah, blah? Doesn't really matter what I say.
I don't even know why you continue to ask me. I think you just want somebody to push back on you.
Well, that's the point. Yeah, I do. I want, it's like if I don't want to like I bought the drone without telling you,
that was a terrible idea.
There's time. Well, you convinced me to buy a more expensive drone. But there's times where it's like, I don't even ask if I don't want to be told, that it's a bad idea. But on that one, I was like, no, I genuinely am weighing this decision and whether I should do it and, whatever else. And so again, I was going to spend, over $100, and then it was going to be like a pain in the butt to hang and everything else because it's heavy. So I remembered these boards that you can buy from Home Depot, and they have a bunch of, it's basically like shower paneling. That's kind of what it's used. I don't even know what it's used for, honestly. It's called that in one of their SKUs, but they're these $5 boards. They literally cost $5 each. And they're, it'd be helpful if I knew the size. They're like 2 feet wide by 1, 2, 3. It looks like by like 4 feet tall or something. They're big. And I actually ended up putting 3 of them in my office. I started with 2 and then I added a third because I wanted a custom Friends on Fire list of things to do. I wanted it to have it. I needed 2 for work. And then I was like, I'm going to do 1 for the podcast. So anyways, they're $5 each. I bought commands and they're lighter. So they're chalkboard on one side and they're this white dry erase material on the other side. And so actually, if you want to do a chalkboard, it works great for that too. And they're light enough that I could hang them with command strips. So I didn't have to make this a more complex project. The command strips cost more than the actual boards. I think in total, each board was like about $10 between the board and the command strips. And they're great. And I can easily move them. It was a low touch commitment on the wall. And they're so functional and they save so much money. And you can actually we'll put a link in the show notes to these boards, but you can buy these boards. They're like project boards at Home Depot. You can also buy them in even bigger, like massive sheets. So if you wanted to cover like an entire wall in your office, kind of like drywall, you could do like a whole custom dry erase board. You also, have you ever done dry erase paint, Mike?
No, I've done chalkboard paint.
So it's the same idea. I actually did it I don't think you were ever in my old office, like before we redid our office building. So yeah, before you joined the company. I came in one weekend and I did it in an ask forgiveness approach. I was like, pretty sure if I ask somebody, they're not going to let me put this on the wall. So I just came in and painted the wall in my office one weekend. So I had a whole wall that was dry erase paint and it worked pretty well. Like I can't remember how much it costs. We'll dig up a link and put it in the show notes, but it was probably like $30 or $40. And I had a whole wall that was dry erasable after that. And it looks really cool because it's like end to end, and I figured anyone who came into the office after me would be like very appreciative of the fact that they had a custom dry erase wall installed prior to their coming in. Anyways, the point is, this is another frugal tip of this doesn't just apply to dry erase boards, right? You could apply this to lots of things yes, you could buy something that's pre-manufactured, built a certain way that's pretty expensive, or you could think creatively about other ways to get the solution that you're looking for.
Yeah, it's a good tip.
All right.
Okay.
So I hope this was helpful. These are all the things that you and I have been actively thinking about as we are preparing as we are transitioning into kind of the long-term view of working from home, or at least until we retire. Hopefully this has given you some good thought starters, and let's wrap it up with our 3 key takeaways.
Okay, so our top 3 takeaways on today's episode. Number 1, spend a bit of time to really think about the best setup for you based on where you live, what you have available to you, and what's important to you.
Number 2, invest in the key things that really matter to you, and then explore used before buying new.
I like it. Number 3, this one's close to my heart. Keep it clean and organized. There's no office cleaning crew like you used to have at work. No one's going to come in and clean up for you at the end of the day. You are now responsible for keeping the space tidy. So take good care of it.
All right. Thanks everybody for listening. If you've been challenged or inspired by what you've heard today, please rate and review the show. You can also subscribe to make sure you never miss an episode.
If you have any thoughts or questions, we would love to hear from you, and you can leave us a voicemail or text us at 404-981-3370, or you can always hit us up on Instagram or Facebook. And particularly if you have any comments about your home office setup and things that you found helpful from the standpoint of saving money or just having a really efficient and productive setup.
Yeah, we'd love to hear additional ideas. This is not our area of expertise, but we are in the middle of it like everybody else. So if you have some hacks, let us know.
Awesome.
All right.
Okay. Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Maggie.
Bye.
Bye.